The Bill and Kelly Show is brought to you by Sci-Fi Donuts, Ray's Movers and Storage, Inc.,
Hello, welcome to the Bill and Kelly Show, coming to you from Wildrose Brewing in Griffith, Indiana. Joining us today, who's been with us before, Michael Puente from WBEZ.
Hello.
The NPR affiliate in Chicago.
That's right.
Busy guy.
Busy.
So
busy time.
I got to tell you, we're so fortunate that you come on and help us out with the show. Well,
I love it.
And
it's for the free beer, actually. So.
Actually, this is kind of a quiet night. I'm kind of enjoying this. This is kind of like their family night here, which we may change. Who knows? It's quiet. Kids eat free tonight. It's Thursday. So what Michael and I are going to discuss is kind of it's an argument that's been going on since Trump's campaign. And that is the use of social media and the news media and what's happening. I've got to say, in my opinion at least, Trump kind of started the fight, and he started using Twitter, I feel, to try to bypass what he thought was the fake news, the media. And I've got to say, though, in my observation, the media has kind of gotten into the mud pole with him, and we've now, a fight has ensued, However, there are some positive things which I'd like for your opinion on. There are some very good, what I've witnessed, the very good use of social media by media people, and then there's ones like Kennedy that just want to use it to fight. So, what is your opinion about? Okay, let's go back. Trump started his campaign in a 2016 election.
Here's the thing. Trump has actually been using Twitter for a long time, even before he started running for office. I just think he gravitated to it. He could throw something out there, good or bad, funny, or whatever, and he just used that as a platform to get his message out, just like a lot of people. In fact, most journalists prefer to use Twitter over Facebook. Even me, I prefer to use Twitter. Because it gets your breaking news story out there. It's just a much different platform than Facebook. Facebook, there's so many other things that come along with it, pictures, and the thing I like about Twitter is that people can find your feed, even people you're not so-called followers of you. And the Twitter almost is also it kind of makes the person with the one follower almost on equal footing as the person with 1 million followers.
Right.
Because I've had it happen to me, and I've seen it in other people, where somebody will post a very disparaging remark about you or something. You're like, who is this guy? You look it up, now they got 25 friends. If it's strident enough, it gets your attention. And people get stories out there, you want to retweet it gets you to the website. The problem for our journalists, though, is that, there are some very legitimate stories out there that maybe isn't sexy, maybe is boring, doesn't get a lot of retweets, but it's still essential reporting. It's not everything. We could sit here and say, hey, look, just because McDonald's sells the most hamburgers doesn't mean it's the best hamburger. They just sell a lot. Well, the thing that gets the most retweets and likes, there's all kind of reasons for that. It doesn't mean that it's the best tweet. The one thing about Twitter too, though, is to get those attention, you gotta be of the extreme. From my perspective, I try to use breaking news. I post my stories on there, but people's opinions have to be very extreme. The one thing you don't want to do is get into arguments with people on Twitter, because they can light you up, and you're sitting there as a responsible member of the media. You got an employer, so you just can't be jawing with a person back and forth. And again, this person might be, there are fake bots out there. They don't use their name, they don't use their face, so you don't know who's real or not. You could be boxing with a shadow. I mean, they could drag you to the mud and say things about you, and you really have no defenses. Now, some people they'll follow them to the mud and say whatever they want. The thing with Donald Trump is that when he became president, I don't think he realizes or appreciates, or maybe he does and just doesn't care, that a presidential statement, whether it be Twitter, written down, video, audio, it's like into the record, and I don't think the press really understood how do you deal with that. He's been we thought maybe he would back off on his use of Twitter once he became president. He's just ramped it up to the point now he'll make pronouncements of, we're going to stop trade with Mexico. We're going to shut the border, or something about Canada or North Korea. Is that the official position then of the United States government? That's kind of dangerous doing that. He's fired people on Twitter. He's made fun of people on Twitter. He's retweeted fake news, fake videos. Just he'll misstate something on Twitter and not correct it. Then you got people who make comments. Either they love them, they support them, or they're haters. And I don't really know what use of it, how good it is. And now, for me, my perspective, I've been kind of ignoring his tweets, but I can. But there are people out there. The one thing about the media is, you really can't have a sense of humor. You don't know when the president is being funny or sarcastic or just having a good time or just venting. He vents a lot. We know that. He stays up late at night. He's just when he just goes off on somebody. How much should the media be paying attention to that? I mean, but somebody has to report on it, and you just can't leave it out there. The president said this. What do you do with it now? And I think the press is trying to get smarter about how they deal with that, but it's just so difficult. And we know he goes on these tweet storms. Anytime there's something big that we should be paying attention to, he's a master of deception, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. One thing we got to agree on, he is unconventional.
Absolutely.
And that's the argument on the other side of the coin, is that he, and I've got to apologize ahead of time for all my New York friends out there, but he's a typical New Yorker. He is a stereotypical New Yorker, and I've known several New York businessmen, and this is how the way they do business. The problem is, this is not what a lot of people after Obama, who decorum was his main forefront, and decorum was a big thing to him. He thought through what he was going to say, but that is not the way New York businessman behaves. It's the punch first and get the shock value, get them dazed, and then try to make a deal. That's unconventional. People aren't used to it. But the problem is now that we've got the media that, has this caused the media to get a little bit unbalanced? And I know you guys do your best to make sure that you report both sides of the story. But do you think this is kind of a methodology to get you guys unbalanced and throw you back on your heels?
Well, of course, it's to create us to unbalance, and he's right away he calls it the fake news, and I don't really understand what he means by that. I mean, it's the media; it's their job to report on things, but he's made the press his enemy, so he's going to continue with that. It's worked for him. The thing about it is, it creates even a headache for his handlers. It creates a headache for people he supports. It creates headaches for his own agenda. There could be something that he does that maybe it's positive, but I tell you what, he will go off message in a heartbeat. He can give a great I don't think he's given a great speech yet. That's just my opinion. But let's say he's given his State of the State address, okay? His last one, people thought he was coherent. He was reading off a teleprompter. He slowed up. But then right away, he'll step over his own message by tweeting something out. 1 minute he's talking about Mexico and the new NAFTA trade agreement and saying this is going to be good for both. And then he'll just go on a rant. Mexico hasn't done anything for us. We're going to build a wall. I'm going to send troops down there. And it's like he makes it hard for his own supporters I couldn't even imagine being a quote-unquote press secretary for him.
Well, let's talk about that. Sanders, in the Mueller report, she was cornered specifically on the firing of Comey. She made a statement, well, I've heard from so many FBI agents that this is the right way to go. Well, as you know, when you were being interviewed by a special prosecutor, lying is not a good thing. And so she pretty much admitted that, there was no factual evidence there, that, it was a misstatement, she said. But that sets up an issue before, because wasn't the secretary almost someone that was kind of your advocate, the press's advocate, that was on the presidential staff, but they're the method of getting the news out. But when you feel,
I don't think the press secretary is an advocate, but they are supposed to be sort of the conduit to the president's positions on things, to clarify, to reiterate. They really should not be in the position of lying to the press. I think we know now maybe a lot of them have embellished, or they've said maybe half truths. She was definitely caught in a lie. I think when she said it wasn't based on any sound, reasonable judgment. But here's the bottom line is, she still has her job, she's not going to get fired, and she's got the support of the president.
Yeah.
So it's like, she can lie all she wants. She has zero credibility with the press that's there already, but she's going to continue in that role because the president likes her, supports her. She's a unabashed, obviously she has to support the president, but she is going to go to, she's going to do whatever she needs to do to protect this president. And if it means lying, it means lying. She has no credibility.
Yeah, and if you watch the press conference, she is a brass knuckle runner. She hammers people down that ask questions that are opposing her view or the president's view.
Yeah, but I know people say she slapped down a reporter. The reporters are ready for that. Mm-hmm. They have to ask certain questions. I don't think any of them take it personally. I know Jim Acosta personally. He used to work at CBS 2 here in Chicago. Great reporter, great guy. And he could be sometimes a little bit, maybe he's trying to grandstand. But for the most part, he's trying to do his job there. Why should the president get to dictate who covers him and who doesn't? And to CNN's credit, they've kept them in that position, because they could have easily said, well, you know what, you're too bombastic with the president and you challenge him too much. That's your job, is to challenge him. Now, we have seen under this president and this press secretary them calling friendly folks, quote-unquote reporters who are friendly to the administration, from Fox News, from the Washington Examiner, from all these conservative right-wing media outlets who they're asking snowball questions, and they've actually, risen to the top in terms of being allowed, given presidential access. That's what they want. They cannot take bad press. It's the job of the reporters to ask tough questions, to get the information out there. And I know, I'm probably going to get bashed for what I'm saying on YouTube or whatever, but I don't apologize for anything I say. The reporters have to do their job. It's not a popularity contest. Right. It's not. You got to do your job, whether someone likes it or not. Here's the thing about journalism. Journalism, if it's done right, it's there to tell you what you need to know, not what you want to know, or not that, things that you like. I could tell you and say, hey, Bill, you do a great job. I like this podcast. But if you're asking me for constructive criticism, I would say, okay, what do you
grow the hair back?
Yeah, I know the hair is fantastic. But you know what I'm saying. I mean, you there's information that you need to know, not that you just you're hoping to agree with it.
Right.
And I just don't understand. I think it's because people, when there are support, and this goes not just for Donald Trump, for any politician. It could be Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Kamala Harris, Barack Obama. We put these people on a pedestal and we want to support them, but sometimes the people we support let us down. Sometimes they have positions or say things that we don't support. And it's getting to the point, though, now it's like one strike and you're out. If you take this position, you're out. It doesn't have to mean that. You're not going to agree with everybody 100% of the time, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't seek information about this person and their position.
Right. So do you guys, as in the press, feel that you have to take a step back to reality to make sure that you're being balanced and to make sure you are reporting accurately? I mean, in this environment, it's basically a mud fight. And I think you've got to realize that this is intentional, and to throw the press off. So how do you guys feel like you need to take a step back and say, gosh, are we being balanced on this? Are we reporting the true story? Or are we being tricked into reporting unbalanced?
There's no question that the president has caused us to feel unbalanced, because on one hand you want to give his ideas, his pronouncements, the benefit of the doubt, but when they're so over the top, almost crazy or nuts, it's hard to give it credence like that. It's hard to okay, well, I'm trying my best to see it from your perspective. Okay, let's say even, let's talk about one of the most, the things that are out there right now that's very controversial, and it's immigration. Do we need a wall? Well, I think, and the way some media have portrayed it, well, the Democrats don't want border protection. I don't think anybody's ever said they don't want border protection. I don't think anybody's never said maybe there needs to be a barrier there. But the president continues to say, well, I ran on this as a campaign promise. Well, we're not going to spend billions of dollars just so you can meet a campaign promise.
Okay.
If it's effective, maybe where it makes sense, you put a wall or you put something, but no one's going to be sitting there and saying, well, it has to be straight across or $30 billion. That doesn't make any kind of sense. So if you try to put it in some kind of logical order, is that being unbiased? Is that being biased now because you're asking legitimate questions to this administration? He really has put I'm not gonna lie, he's put the press in a very peculiar position. But now it's to the point now, though, it doesn't matter what salacious materials out there about President Trump. He's like Teflon. His supporters are going to continue to support him, and his detractors are going to continue to not like him. It's just like his income tax returns. If they release it, I don't think there's anything in there that is going to dissuade people one way or another. It's just the idea that, hey, look, other presidential candidates have done this. What do you got to hide? Maybe he's got a lot of things to hide, maybe legitimate things, and but whatever's in there, I don't think it's going to change people's opinion.
Well, one thing I think we could agree on is there's been a stretching of reality, and purposeful stretching of reality, and that's, again, call it a negotiation technique or whatever you want, but it's like the Mueller report, right off the bat. He says that, I've been vindicated. I'm free, but that isn't what the report said. I've read through it, and that totally was not what the report said. It just wasn't enough evidence.
I'll put it this way: it's almost like when you go home and you ask your kids, hey, so how'd you do on your exam? And they'll say, I did pretty good. And then you get the exam back or their report card, and you see that, yeah, well, maybe they did okay, but then you look closer, they didn't have this, they didn't have that, they forgot to turn this in, so it's like they weren't totally vindicated.
Or you're bringing back some bad memories of St. Mark's back when I was a kid. Yeah, trying to explain that report card was good. Yeah.
Right. So we knew. The bottom line is that if he wasn't going to face indictment, and we're still not sure if there was enough there for indictment, then it was going to be a win because he was just thinking about himself. But I don't see how anybody in good conscience can read that report and say, oh yeah, he's come off scot-free and he's glowing. Right. There's no way you can conclude that.
Well, let's dial it down to local stuff.
After we got a lot of people hating us now.
I'm going to go to see if I can get it.
Too. Donald Trump. We know him from a sort of a different time in Northwest Indiana. We kind of know him in a different way because back in the 90s, he invested in Northwest Indiana. He put his casino boating gear. He built a hotel. He brought the Miss America pageant. So he was accessible to local reporters, and he was just a different person. I read his book 30 years ago. I was like a Michael Keaton. I got the book where he was I forgot the name of the book right now, but it was pretty good. It talked about his background and everything, and so for people to say like you have a preconceived hatred of this guy, Donald Trump, before he became president, was somewhat of a likable guy. He had a nice show on there. He had the shtick, you're fired. I think people generally liked him. He liked the press. When he got in there, maybe the power has gotten to his head.
And the thing that I always draw back to, and I'm like everyone else. Art of the deal. And, I think that's what we're going through, the art of the deal. If you read through that book, it's kind of like our country is being run like a negotiation. What you do is put out a far-reaching...
Everything with him has to be the best, the craziest, the most, the superlatives. Why? Why does it have to be that? He's the most popular Republican president ever. And it's like, why is that important to him?
And he has to win. That's big thing.
He's like a textbook narcissist. He's a narcissist times 30.
Right.
I don't know why that needs to be. And his supporters eat it up. They want him to be as narcissistic as possible.
Well, Michael, because I do want to drive home tonight.
Okay. You do, huh? I'm trying to get to a movie tonight.
I'm coming out there thinking I'm going to look at my Jeep as on blocks, and I'm like, oh, gosh, well, guess I'm going to live here at Wildrose Brewery.
Yeah, my tires are probably slashed by now.
Again, one of the things that I keep on saying, I always try to give him the benefit of the doubt, knowing he's a New Yorker. And every New Yorker I've known, with the exception of a few that seem to be centristic, it's extreme. Everything's got to be done extreme. You got to remember the environment they live in is so condensed. That's the way they live life. They try to get everything they can because they know the guy next door is doing the same thing. It's just the culture that and so I try to give him the benefit of the doubt, but then the line comes, and I tell you what, let's get some local news here.
Okay.
One thing that I'm telling you what, it just made me and any human absolutely sick is the 5-year-old from Crystal Lake, AJ Freund. When they found his body, I can't help think that collectively, as a nation, how can that happen to a poor 5-year-old boy? And now word is coming out about the house he lived in.
Well, they've had problems in the past. They had him actually taken away. They brought him back. He was in DCF custody. I understand that house that they're living in is under foreclosure. Neighbors found problems in there. But you know what? There's a lot of places like that all over the country, here in Northwest Indiana. And people, they try to stay out of it. They try to butt out of it. Maybe they don't want to get involved, but for me, I just don't understand how anybody has the capacity to stand up there and pretend that you care, that you're looking for them, and think you were going to get away with it. The story didn't make much sense. A 5-year-old, he went to bed and they woke up, he wasn't any. 5-year-old is not a 1 or 2-year-old. They're just not going to wander off. I kind of liken it to the Smollett case. You know, he makes these bombastic allegations, and the stories just, it didn't add up. You're trying not to be politically correct or call him out. You're trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. But you can tell it just wasn't adding up. And like in this case, the press can't really say to the parents, you're lying, we know you're lying. They just gotta, then they go on Good Morning America. I don't know how that helps in finding your kid, because I don't think a kid is going to be looking at Good Morning America. But here's the thing, innocent until proven guilty. I know a lot of people have a lot of anger and all that. I do believe in innocent to proven guilty, but at the same time, the evidence looks crystal clear that they did this to this boy, and it's pretty sad. And but DCFS is going to have a lot to answer for. So why did they put the child back, and did they do any follow-ups? Think about the number of children though that they have to care for. Even in Indiana, the Department of Family and Child Services, they've got a lot of problems. They got a lot of turnover. They don't have as many investigators. They were trying to get more money from the state of Indiana. They wouldn't give it to them. They gave them some, but not as much as they want. Why? Why don't we hold children's life? Why don't we protect it? We should be doing everything we can.
You know, one of the things I want to ask you, though, and that was heart-wrenching for me. I mean, my first thought is I want to drive to Cheston and love on my kids. Hearing a 5-year-old beaten to death, more than likely, at the hands of possibly his own parents, although that innocent until proven guilty. The thing is, I want to hear from you, though, and you're not the reporter there, but suppose you were, and you've reported on cases like this. What effect does that have on you guys? I mean, you're not immune to. I mean, you got to balance. You've got to report the story, but at the same time, you're human, and that's got to affect you.
The stories like my children are a little bit bigger now, but when they were that age. My routine, I've been a reporter in this area for more than 20 some years, and I used to be a newspaper reporter with the Post-Tribune, and one of my routines was in the morning I would have to check the log from the Lake County coroner's office, and sometimes you would see children who died. And at the time my daughter was very young. She was about 1 or 2 years old, so you put your child's face in that situation and it gets to you. When you're seeing the pictures, when all these reporters, they have families, they're not, it gets emotional. I'm sure there are a lot of reporters there who just, you look at that little boy's face and then the details that have come out, it can have an impact on you. And, but that's where you got to kind of let your professionalism, take over and report the story and try not to get too emotionally into it. But it's hard not to. There's a cute little kid. He had no business suffering anything like that. And we know children in this country go through that each and every day. And all it takes is even good parents may go off on their kids from time to time for whatever reason, because they're having a bad day and you take it out on your kids. But that's to the extreme, and it's just it's heartbreaking. I don't think you could be human if you didn't feel anything.
And that's then one thing that we forget about. You guys have got to be on the front line. You've got to go out there and look at the worst of humanity, but yet you got to tuck that aside and report the story. And that is where I say you guys are underpaid. You're like middle school teachers at that point, extremely underpaid, and you got to do a job. and put on the filter and say, yes, this is awful. This is the worst humanity has got to offer, but I've got to report the facts and the details. And boy, that's got to be tough. I know that when I first heard that they found the body, and I'm not a reporter by any means, media by any means, but I couldn't talk. I couldn't talk to anyone. I'm like, right away I thought of all my kids when they were 5 years old, and it just heart-wrenching.
I'll tell you though, when I felt something strange when she went on Good Morning America, and this is where too, I get that media outlets too need content, and this was a big story, but what does it tell you though, that media outlets can allow themselves to be played? Jesse Smollett did it. He did it to CBS, lying in the face of the reporter. Allegedly, he still maintains something happened, but and then these people, they're alleged to have done this, but if it comes out true, just lying to the face of these reporters that they didn't do this, they didn't know where their kid was. This woman, it had to have been crocodile tears. So we'll see.
And at some point, it's got to taint you. When you go to the next story, it's like, okay,
you try to really try to block it out, that it is not your kid. When you get home, this is the one thing about being a journalist that I've always found odd a little bit, and feeling a little guilty, is that you get to go in people's lives for a little bit. I did a story, it's been a while, but one of the stories that still stays with me, it's about a young kid. I kind of forget the details a little bit. I think he's from Crown Point or Hobart. He's a teenager. He fell, and something happened. He breathed in something, and so he became a paraplegic. He was pretty much brain dead, and his mom took care of him for a long time. And you go to their home, you see how she takes care of him, and then you get to leave and you report the story, but then it's like you go to your own house and you're having dinner, the kids are having fun, and you just feel so bad, but you also feel obligated, and you feel like it's a duty to really tell these stories in a way that is compelling. But in this situation, you get to leave it. Those people are living a hell right now. Because this little AJ Freund must have relatives, friends, the neighbors, relatives who are hurting right now. The whole world is hurting over this. But you get to leave that, go back to your family, hug your kids, have dinner with them, and just try to put it out of your mind.
Yeah, it's difficult, but it's the job. And moving on, we're going to hear more and more about that, because they're on feet are on the ground investigating. Now that they found the body, there's forensics and all that we'll have to go through. Dialing down even closer, Gary Casino. Oh boy.
Well, this is a situation.
This is like a chess game. It's like piece. You attack the queen, and something else happens on the other side of the board. Boy.
Well, for Gary, it seems like a win-win, because those casinos where they're at now, they're in a bad location. It's hard to get to over there. Buffington Harbor, it's not really a prime location. They're going to be off of 8094, somewhere near off the Borman and I-65. New hotel, new development, higher profile area. Now, and then they get to redevelop that other area as an intermodal facility, which may or may not work. I've done stories on intermodals. I don't know if I do know they're right next door to what essentially is right now the busiest port district in the Midwest, and that's the Illinois International Port Authority in Chicago on the southeast side. We see it stretches from the mouth of Lake Michigan on the Calumet River, and you see the sort of the silo grains off the Bishop Ford Expressway. It goes over there. To look at the property, it doesn't look like they're that busy, but they are very busy there. They're going to be competing with them,
right?
And
so again, it's a good move for Gary.
It's a good move for Gary.
Yeah.
Now, some of the local like Hammond, East Chicago were against it because they feel it's putting them at an uneven position. These other boats have invested mightily in their properties, and now they feel like Gary has an unfair advantage. I will say this though, we know the development that's happening in Hammond. Hammond's got a lot of hotels. Hammond is doing great. Hammond can't be jealous of Gary right now.
No,
You know, anything that boosts Gary, we've had a crippled Gary now for 50 years. Anything that can boost income rates over there, property, no more business, more employment, that benefits all of Northwest Indiana. And yeah, if you got to crack a little egg to do that, I just don't see how any of these casino operations in East Chicago or Hammond are going to be hurt by that. I just don't see
you
it.
know, there's my opinion. Again, Kelly and I went to a rehearsal, and I wish I could tell you guys about rehearsal, but that's not what this is about. Awesome rehearsal. Anyway, on the way, we're passing through Hammond. Oh my gosh, the golf course. Holy moly! I'm like, seriously, I've been to California. I haven't seen that type of clubhouse in California. In good old Hammond, beautiful golf course.
Hammond's got a lot of positives going for it.
Oh, and then the pavilion. Oh my gosh! Again, right on Fox Lake, a beautiful area. Yeah, there's parts of Hammond that are slowly being developed, but then you go to Gary, it's challenging to find anything that's even habitable. I mean, it's and it's sad because that's my hometown. And
I feel like it's my hometown. I mean,
Yeah.
I think Gary, to me, has suffered enough. I don't know if this is going to be a panacea, because when the casinos came in '95, they had a leg up, and it hasn't really done as much as you would have hoped. But anything that can aid them in improving the city can only help. You know, I feel like, and I truly believe this, that Northwest Indiana has done pretty well for itself, considering what was once for a very long time its largest city somewhat being handicapped. You know, losing population, losing commercial investment, losing jobs. It has one of the highest jobless rates in Indiana. Something has to give. Hammond's economy is much more diversified than just that next door Gary.
Yeah.
Gary doesn't have too much, and hopefully this will turn things around. I'm not saying that, maybe I'm not seeing it from the perspective that the mayor of Hammond has, or the mayor of Gary, or the mayor of East Chicago. But
you can't slight them because they're being advocates for they're doing the best that they can do to guard their interests, because those are dollars that are brought in to help put that golf course there to help that.
yeah, but to get to this Gary casino, you gotta pass through Hammond.
Yeah.
And that along that whole interstate where they've got the new hotels, they got some brew places, some restaurants, that only can serve to benefit Hammond. I just don't see how.
Yeah. But now the issue is you have a casino that's right off 8094 that is the main thoroughway, transportation thoroughway, and you can't help think, okay, that is going to be more convenient to get to if you're coming from South Bend. You're going to want to get up. It's easy to get to.
Here's something very stark about 8094 and even I-65. A few years ago, I had a chance I drove the entire lane. We've all gone to Indianapolis on I-65, but I've gone all the way to Florida. All right, driving a couple of times already, and it seems like from about Lafayette all the way down to Florida, every interchange has development. You get to Northwest Indiana and it stops. You got to get closer to Maryville or 109th, maybe 231, where you start seeing civilization again. But then you go on 8094, all the interchanges, lots of development. You get to Gary, not much at all.
Right.
So how you cannot have this dead zone of economic development. You've got some things off of Grant, some things off of Burr, but nothing like you have in Hammond. You even go down to Calumet City, and you go even further west. Lots of development off of 8094.
Right.
You go east into Portage and past it. Lots of development. But in Gary, there's nothing. Well, maybe this is going to change that.
Well, the interesting thing is they just passed it today. They approved the move. Of course, not with preconditions. They have to pay $20 million to the Gaming Commission.
Chump change.
Yeah, and chump change, and then also if they want to sell a nut off one of their licenses to, I forgot where they were thinking about selling to. They have to pay another $20 million within the next 5 years. So there's some restrictions on it.
And it might. Terre Haute gets a casino now.
That's the one I think
it could help Terre Haute, even though I've only visited Terre Haute a couple of times. Maybe it'll be good for their
long drive.
It is a long drive.
Jeez, oh.
My daughter almost went to ISU, and good school, good campus, but maybe it's Vigo County, I think, and maybe it'll benefit them.
Yeah. So next thing, and this.
Although I will say this, I'm not really big on casino gambling as an economic development driver. I mean, you're basically asking people in your area to go bankrupt for the benefit of the community. I'm not a big gambler. I think I've gone to these local casinos a handful of times since they've been open. They obviously generate some money. I'm just not a big gambler.
Well, let's go on to something that affects Indiana as a whole. Interesting news happened a little while ago. In Kentucky, there was your utility company was announced they're going to shutter their coal producing or coal plants, their generators. Almost immediately upon the announcement of the news, they get attacked by Trump and the Senate leader saying, no, this is going to be bad for the coal industry, which in turn is going to be bad for the economy. NIPSCO, almost like maybe a month later, announces the same thing, that they're going to start shuttering their coal plants, mainly Michigan City, which has been losing money since they've had to install the scrubbers, and several other plants in Indiana because it's just not profitable for them. And they announced expanding the wind farm down in southern Indiana or central Indiana. Great news. Great news. Going through Michigan City, going through that 12 corridor, people's houses were covered in soot. That's how bad it was. Literally, and right across the street is that big coal burner.
You've got the cooling tower, which a lot of people, especially from Chicago, thinks it's a nuclear power plant. I've had people tell me, that is a nuclear power plant. I go, it is not. It's just a cooling tower.
Yeah. So I thought, great. Oh, wow. Trump hasn't. Boom. Reading the paper, a familiar name pops up in Indiana. Scott Pruitt, former EPA chief, is now a lobbyist for the coal industry, now lobbying the state legislation in Indiana to stop NIPSCO from shuttering these plants.
Scott Pruitt, we kind of know his background already. He was never really there to protect the environment. And there's some new people in there who really, their mission is not to protect the environment. Look, NIPSCO made a decision to eventually, it's going to take some years to shutter all their coal-fired plants, but this is what's called progress. They're trying to save a relic. How many people actually work in the coal industry in Indiana? Not many. And even if they did, it's not good for the environment. So when you got all their alternatives, China's not going this route. Trump is supposed to be so afraid of China. They're turning to clean energy. They're seeing what all this smog does to their communities.
In fact, they're shuttering. They shut off our door to sending them garbage. You heard about that?
Look at Germany. They've got a whole bunch of solar and not only that, renewable energy is a growing entity, a growing industry in Indiana. And then when he started putting these tariffs on China and getting all these parts, that hurt them a lot. I mean, just looking up solar energy, renewable energies, it's on fire in Indiana. And for some reason, he's just a relic of the past. Maybe he's trying to help friends of old, but
yeah, this all goes back to Kentucky. I mean, but the people are getting out of that profession. I mean, the health downside, actually, I had to laugh. The key company, one of the major coal mining companies, put solar panels on the top of their facility because they try to economize.
Well, even people now, you could put solar panels on your house. Mm-hmm. You could generate that. If you generate enough energy and the batteries to store this electricity, they're becoming better and better to store them. You can actually sell electricity back onto the grid for NIPSCO, and you get a credit. I mean, we should be encouraging people to do that if they want to do that.
And legislation recently, and NIPSCO kind of hampered this a bit themselves because they reduced the amount of credit, which still, when people looked at the economics, and not only that, but the if you were environmental conscious at all, and just the economics, you still are ahead. It's something that another discussion where we're going to do a show on global warming, and that would be just as popular as this. But it's just, and again, here we have an administration that is now hiring a chief to manage this whole information about the scientists that have put forth the information for years from NOAA, from NASA, that have plotted that we are going through environmental change. Now there seems to be an effort by the administration to counteract that and to try to disprove all of these scientists that are really apolitical. I know a lot of them. I know a lot of people that went to environmental science at Purdue that are working on tracking all the changes.
And I just don't understand it. Is it to protect his business friends in the business community, or he legitimately just doesn't think that human actions are causing this effect on the climate? I mean, the evidence is already out there, but this goes back though to feeling like people are bashing Trump. It's not about bashing Trump, but when you look at some of the positions, it's hard to give them credit for that. I mean, I guess you just go out and report and say what they're saying. I mean, when they're going to great lengths in the administration and the EPA, you cannot use the words global warming and they're getting rid of certain scientists. What is that saying about us? That almost seems like we have this situation going on right now where people don't want to vaccinate their children, and it's causing health epidemics with measles, something that had been eradicated. You've got the science there, you got the technology there, yet you don't want to use it because they're worried about if they get the vaccination, their kid is going to get sick with autism. Well, if they don't get the vaccination, there's a good chance they're going to die from a very painful disease, and they may get other people sick. So what you're trying to prevent is actually much less harmful than what you're actually going to get out of not getting vaccination. So my point is, you've got the technology, you've got the information, you got the know-how, yet you don't want to utilize it. It's the same thing with science and global warming. You've got the information that's out there, and you're choosing to ignore it and counter it.
And we have scientists that have been working diligently since the 50s and 60s that have plotted this increase, and it's undeniable. They've actually made tie-ins. Now, they have even admitted that they are still working on the correlation of their data to climate change. But it's undeniable, there is climate change. Their problem is they're trying to find the solid evidence that ties in the increase in global temperature to what's going on. But we have melting ice caps. We have what's going on here locally. Again, what hurts this whole discussion is when we go through a cold snap. Oh, sure, global warming has nothing to do with it. Again, this.
Oh, they say the winters are going to get colder and the summers hotter and more extreme.
Yeah, they need to take a statistics class because it's just looking at trends, onward uptrends. You can't look at it in a momentary, but you have to look at trends, and you look what that trend is doing to the impact on the ocean, the impact on our ice caps. I've talked to friends that have gone up to Alaska, the uppermost, the furthest north city in the United States in Alaska, and the ice caps are they're melting. So it's interesting. Well, we better close this out before some people come rushing in here and drag us out, because I'm pretty sure my Jeep doesn't exist out there anymore.
Michael, did you get some funny looks over here?
No. This is a friendly crowd. This is the Thursday crowd here is kind of a.
Until you start talking politics.
Oh, we
tar and feather.
Yeah, we won't do that on Wednesday night here. I'm telling you. Now, literally, what we do want to say. We're not here to bash Trump. It is, what we wanted to do today is look at it from a media person's perspective. The challenges are brought forth in reporting, not just on politics, but the day-to-day issues like AJ Freund, the horrible news there, and what these guys have to do to report it. It's changing, and I don't think we realize. Could make a good show
if you want to deal with Trump. Maybe you get somebody who's very pro-Trump on and somebody who's anti-Trump. Go through the Mueller report and see the reaction of the anti-Trump person and the reaction to the pro-Trump person.
Yeah, we're going to need security for that one, pal.
Might be fisticuffs.
Within minutes. I'm telling you, within minutes. And that's the other thing that we could do a whole new show on is, that I've never in my life, and I'm about to turn 60 next year, and that's hard for you to believe.
You look great for 60. You look 40.
But through my lifetime, and I grew up through the Vietnam era, through, the hippie, all the clashing going on, I've never seen the United States at odds with itself than today. There seems to be more of a rift between parties, more of a rift between beliefs, and it's concerning. But we'll save that for another show, right, Michael? So, Michael, I can't tell you we appreciate you coming in and being my co-host and going through some of these issues, and please don't hate us. We're just going through and really.
Well, please don't hate him. He has a great show. You can hate me all you want, but he's got a great show. Keep supporting him.
I do want to say, if you guys haven't heard him on WBEZ, one of the things that I've been a big fan even before I met this guy. And talk about Twitter. Remember the 140 character cap that's now been expanded? Michael has an art form that I don't think his own employer appreciates. Every time I hear reporting a story, it's like 2 lines. But in those 2 lines, you feel like you're in the room. You're seeing people. This guy is amazing. He is absolutely amazing.
I got amazing editors too.
No, I mean, your voice, you get to it, and it's, every time I hear, and from East Chicago, we have Michael Puente, I stop, I pull over, okay, you got my attention, pal. Again, I appreciate you guys, coming on and spending some time with us. Kelly's, her show's going to be up, but we still want you on.
I love Kelly. I miss her.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Yeah, you say that after she's had 5 cups of coffee, and yeah. People out there know what I'm talking about. Listen, we'll send you home for the night. I can't tell you how much we appreciate it. folks, we appreciate you tuning in, and we told you about our shows coming up. Got some interesting. We have an author coming on next week on Wednesday. He's actually a professor at IU Northwest, and so that's going to be interesting. It's something about turning failure into success. So tune in for that.
I got to listen to that.
Actually, if we're going to be here. If you want to come out, you're more than welcome. You can be audience or sit here, ask questions. You're like an ad hoc portion of our show now.
All right.
Yeah. So again, listen. We wish you all a safe week and weekend, and goodbye for now.
Goodbye.
We'll see you.
The Bill and Callie Show is brought to you by Sci-Fi Donuts, Ray's Movers and Storage, Inc.,